Deep beneath the shifting sands, hidden within crumbling ruins, or lost in the depths of uncharted jungles, there are stories that refuse to stay buried. Ancient myths whisper of cities that vanished overnight, of civilizations swallowed by the earth, of golden realms that slipped through the fingers of time. What if these weren't just stories? What if they were memories, fragments of a forgotten world, passed down through generations like echoes in the dark? Picture this, a vast library from antiquity, its walls lined with tales of Atlantis, of Hyperborea glowing beneath the midnight sun, of Lemuria sinking beneath the waves. These aren't just legends, they're clues, and tonight we're following them into the shadows. Imagine standing at the edge of history, peering into the void where entire cultures once thrived, only to vanish without a trace. Every civilization has its ghosts. The Greeks spoke of a paradise beyond the north wind. The Hindus wrote of an island empire destroyed by its own arrogance. The Maya warned of previous worlds wiped clean by the gods. These myths span continents, yet they share a haunting thread, the idea that we are not the first, that something or someone came before us. What's chilling isn't just the scale of these disappearances, but how eerily similar the stories are. Floods, fire, divine wrath, as if the past is trying to tell us something. So why do these lost worlds captivate us? Maybe it's the mystery, the unshakable feeling that history's greatest secrets are still out there waiting. Or maybe it's the thrill of the hunt, the chance to piece together puzzles older than written language. Tonight, we're diving into 30 of the most enigmatic myths ever told, from the sunken spires of Wise to the hollow earth theories of Agartha. Some will sound like pure fantasy until you hear the evidence. Others will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. This isn't just a journey through time. It's a search for the truth hidden in plain sight, ready to uncover it. Then let's begin. The story begins with a philosopher's pen scratching across parchment in ancient Athens. Plato, writing around 360 BC, didn't just give us philosophy, he gave us history's greatest vanishing act. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he describes Atlantis not as some fable, but as a real, thriving empire. A sprawling island kingdom beyond the Pillars of Hercules, brimming with concentric rings of water and land, palaces sheathed in precious metals, and technology so advanced it defied the era. Then, in a single catastrophic day and night, it was gone, swallowed by the sea in a fury of earthquakes and floods. But here's what's fascinating. Plato insists this isn't myth. He claims it's a story passed down from an Athenian statesman who heard it from Egyptian priests, who called it their oldest recorded history. So where did Atlantis actually lie? Theories stretch across the globe like a treasure map. Some argue for the Mediterranean, perhaps the volcanic ruins of Santorini, whose eruption around 1600 BC devastated the Minoan civilization. Others point to the Azores, where underwater structures hint at human hands. Then there's the tantalizing Caribbean hypothesis. Off the coast of Cuba, sonar images reveal geometric shapes half a mile down, eerily matching Plato's descriptions. But the most compelling clue might be in the details. Plato mentions a mysterious metal called orichalcum, more precious than gold. In 2015, divers found ingots of an unusual bronze alloy off Sicily, dated to the exact era Atlantis supposedly fell. Coincidence or a fragment of a forgotten world? What keeps Atlantis alive isn't just the hunt, though. It's the questions it forces us to ask. Why would an advanced civilization collapse so utterly? Was it hubris, as Plato suggests, their aggression toward Athens angering the gods, or something more tangible like a comet strike or pole shift? Modern explorers haven't given up. From satellite scans probing the Spanish marshlands to submarines scouring the mid-Atlantic ridge, the search continues, because if Atlantis was real, its fate isn't just a warning from the past. It's a mirror. In an age of rising seas and crumbling empires, the lost city doesn't feel like ancient history. It feels like prophecy. Long before satellites mapped the ocean floor, before science could explain continental drift, a mystery haunted the Indian Ocean. In 1864, a British zoologist named Philip Sclater noticed something strange. Fossils of lemurs, those wide-eyed primates, were found in Madagascar and India, but nowhere in between. How could these creatures cross thousands of miles of open water? His solution was radical: a sunken land bridge connecting the continents. He called it Lemuria, after the lemurs that sparked the theory. But science moves fast. By the early 20th century, plate tectonics revealed how continents truly drift apart, rendering Sclater's land bridge unnecessary. Yet something unexpected happened. Lemuria refused to die. In southern India, Tamil scholars recognized the idea instantly. Their ancient Sangam text spoke of Kumari Kingdom, a vast kingdom stretching across the Indian Ocean, home to advanced cities and sacred knowledge before floods swallowed it whole. The parallels were uncanny. Could colonial-era science have stumbled upon an ancient truth? The spiritual world certainly thought so. Madame Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society, wove Lemuria into her cosmic history, a lost cradle of humanity where telepathic giants walked the earth. Even today, New Age seekers whisper of crystal cities beneath the waves, of Lemurian elders guiding humanity from hidden temples. Modern geologists may scoff, but the ocean keeps its secrets. In 2013, researchers discovered a sunken microcontinent off Mauritius, fragments of land that vanished beneath the waves 85 million years ago. Not Lemuria, perhaps, but proof that continents can and do vanish. What's fascinating isn't just the collision of science and myth, but why Lemuria endures. Maybe it's the human need to fill blank spaces on the map with wonder. Or maybe it's the haunting idea that entire chapters of our past lie underwater, waiting. Whether as geological theory or spiritual symbol, Lemuria reminds us the Earth has a way of swallowing its stories whole, and sometimes, if we listen closely, the waves still carry their echoes. North of everything we know, beyond the howling winds and frozen wastes, the ancient Greeks whispered of a land untouched by time. Hyperborea, literally beyond the north wind, was described as a golden paradise where the sun never set, where giants lived for 1,000 years, and where Apollo himself would retreat in his chariot during winter. While most dismissed it as poetic fancy, a strange pattern emerges when you trace the threads. Explorers, mystics, and even Nazi occultists became obsessed with finding this lost polar Eden. Could there be a sliver of truth beneath the ice? The earliest accounts come from Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE. He claimed the Hyperboreans sent sacred offerings to Delphi wrapped in wheat straw, passing them from tribe to tribe across impossible distances. Later writers like Pliny the Elder placed them deep in the Arctic, where people lived in perpetual daylight, an eerie parallel to modern descriptions of the midnight sun. But what's striking is how consistent these details are across cultures. The Chinese spoke of a northern utopia called Zion, home to immortals. Persian legends tell of Ariana Vija, a primordial homeland buried by glaciers. Even indigenous Sami stories describe a warm refuge beneath the northern lights. Too many threads point to the same impossible idea, a habitable Arctic in antiquity. Modern explorers couldn't resist the pull. In the 1930s, Nazi expeditions scoured Greenland and Antarctica, convinced Hyperborea was the ancestral home of the Aryan race. More credible researchers noted peculiar anomalies, ancient maps like the Piri Rise, which seem to depict ice-free Antarctic coasts, or medieval Norse sagas speaking of green land before it froze. Then there's the geological wildcard. 12,000 years ago, Earth's poles weren't where they are now. Could shifting axes have left fragments of a forgotten temperate zone at the top of the world? The most tantalizing clue might lie beneath the ice. satellite scans reveal vast, unexplained structures under Greenland's glaciers, grid-like patterns some argue resemble ruins. And in Siberia, the discovery of the Denisovans, an advanced prehistoric people, hints at lost Arctic civilizations. But Hyperborea's real power isn't just in its potential reality. It's the idea that our planet's memory stretches further back than we dare imagine. If even a fraction of these myths hold truth, history isn't just written in stone and scrolls, it's frozen in time, waiting for the thaw. High in the thin air of the Himalayas, where snow leopards tread silently and monasteries cling to cliffsides, Tibetan monks guard a secret older than the mountains themselves. Ancient scrolls speak of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom of peace, wisdom, and impossible technology, concealed somewhere beyond the icy peaks. Unlike fleeting utopias, this isn't a place lost to time. According to sacred Kalachakra texts, it still exists, waiting for the world's darkest hour. When chaos consumes the earth, its enlightened warriors will ride forth to restore balance. But is Shambhala a spiritual metaphor, a real location, or something far stranger? The descriptions are tantalizingly specific. Buddhist texts place it north of the Himalayas, surrounded by a ring of towering mountains like a natural fortress. Its capital, Kalapa, gleams with gold-roofed temples and streets paved with gemstones where citizens live for centuries free from suffering. Some accounts mention a wish-fulfilling jewel at its heart, a device so advanced it bends reality itself. For centuries, pilgrims have searched for its gates. The 17th century Jesuit missionary Esteve Aucasela claimed to find evidence in Bhutan, while 19th century Russian explorer Nikolai Prjevalsky died convinced it lay in the Altai Mountains. Even the Dalai Lama has hinted at its physical reality, stating, "It is not purely a physical place that everyone can see. Then there are the darker threads." In the 1930s, Nazi occultists became obsessed with Shambhala, twisting its lore into Aryan propaganda. Heinrich Himmler's SS launched expeditions to Tibet, convinced it held the keys to an ancient super race. They weren't entirely wrong about one thing: the connections run deeper than expected. Sanskrit texts describe the kingdom's rulers as Kalki, enlightened beings with pale skin and horse-mounted warriors. Coincidence or echoes of a shared Indo-European mythos? Modern scholars note striking parallels between Shambhala and Persian legends of Jamukand, another hidden paradise awaiting the end times. What makes Shambhala uniquely compelling is how it bridges faith and science. Some researchers propose it could be a cultural memory of the Tarim Basin's lost cities, where mummies with European features were found in China's deserts. Others suggest the kingdom's advanced technology mirrors ancient Vimana aircraft described in Hindu texts. Then there's the most spine-tingling theory of all, that Shambhala isn't underground or across the mountains, but in another dimension entirely, accessible only through meditation or hidden portals. Buddhist masters speak of subtle realms coexisting with our own, invisible to the untrained eye. Perhaps the truth lies in the search itself. For over 1,000 years, kings and mystics have sought Shambhala not just as a place, but as a state of enlightenment. The real gate might not be carved in stone, but hidden within, a reminder that the greatest lost worlds aren't always outside us. They're waiting to be uncovered in the uncharted territory of the human spirit. The golden barges of ancient Egypt didn't just sail the Nile, they ventured into the unknown, returning with treasures that defied imagination. Ebony logs taller than temples, sacks of fragrant myrrh resin, live baboons for the pharaoh's menagerie, and most precious of all, heaps of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver that seemed to glow with divine light. These weren't random spoils, but gifts from a legendary trading partner, the land of Punt. For over 1,000 years, from the reign of Pharaoh Sahyur in 2500 BC to Queen Hatshepsut's famous expedition 1,500 years later, Punt was Egypt's El Dorado, a real place shrouded in myth. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared in hieroglyphs, the trail goes cold. No invasions, no climatic disasters recorded. Punt simply stopped answering the door. Pinpointing its location feels like decoding a 5,000-year-old treasure map with half the clues missing. The most vivid account comes from Hatshepsut's mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, where intricate reliefs depict her fleet's journey. Punt's stilt houses rise above mangrove swamps. Its ruler, a man with curved beard and elongated skull, greets Egyptians beneath frankincense trees, but the paintings raise more questions than answers. The plants suggest the Horn of Africa, possibly modern-day Eritrea or Somalia, where myrrh still grows wild. Yet other records mention Puntites having reddish skin and straight hair, sparking theories they sailed from southern Arabia. Then there's the biological wildcard, DNA analysis of mummified baboons from Punt-matched specimens found in Ethiopia, tilting the scales toward Africa. Why the mystery matters goes beyond geography. Punt wasn't just a trade partner, it was Egypt's equal. The reliefs show Punt's Queen Iti receiving gifts from Hatshepsut, not the other way around, a rarity in pharaonic propaganda. Some scholars believe Punt was the gateway to a vast African network stretching to Zimbabwe's goldfields. Others think it was the last remnant of a pre-pharaonic culture that once spanned the Red Sea. The most startling theory, that Punt's disappearance coincides with the thorough eruption around 1600 BC, whose climate disruptions could have collapsed trade routes overnight. Modern technology might finally crack the case. Satellite imagery reveals dried riverbeds in Eritrea that once fed mangrove forests matching Hatshepsut's murals. Archaeologists are now hunting for frankincense residue in pottery shards along Africa's eastern coast. Every clue pulls us deeper into the enigma. How could a civilization so central to history's greatest empire vanish without ruins, without a single undisputed artifact? Unless we've been looking in the wrong places all along, somewhere beneath the shifting sands or the rising tides of the Red Sea, Punt's golden docks may still wait, holding answers to a partnership that built pyramids and then dissolved like incense smoke on the wind. Somewhere beyond the edge of the known world, where ice meets myth, the Romans whispered of a land so remote it defied exploration. Thule, first mentioned by the Greek explorer Pytheas in the 4th century BCE, was described as a mist-shrouded island 6 days north of Britain, where the sun barely set in summer and the sea congealed into a frozen slush. But over centuries, this vague geographical marker transformed into something far more potent, the spiritual homeland of a supposed Aryan master race, twisted into dangerous ideology by 20th century extremists. Pytheas' original account has been lost to time, surviving only in fragments quoted by later writers like Strabo and Pliny. He claimed Thule's inhabitants farmed under midnight sun and brewed mead from grain that never ripened fully in the cold, details that align eerily with Norse sagas of Ultima Thule, a realm at the world's end. The Vikings might have been describing Iceland or Greenland, but Nazi occultists in the 1930s latched onto another interpretation. For them, Thule wasn't just an island. It was the cradle of Aryan purity, a Hyperborean paradise where blonde-haired giants wielded supernatural powers before migrating south to found civilizations. The irony is staggering. Ancient texts never described Thule's people as racially superior. Tacitus, writing in the 1st century, noted their simple huts and primitive farming. Yet by the 19th century, pseudoscientists like Helena Blavatsky wove Thule into Theosophy's racist mythology, claiming it birthed a root race of godlike beings. This fantasy became deadly when the Thule Society, a secret Nazi precursor group, adopted the name, using it to justify genocide. Their obsession wasn't just ideological. Expeditions were sent to Scandinavia, Tibet, even Antarctica, hunting for relics of this fictional super-civilization. Modern archaeology offers a sobering counterpoint. The real Thule culture, discovered in the Arctic by anthropologists, belonged to Inuit ancestors who thrived in icy conditions through ingenuity, not divine ancestry. Their ruins, stone winter houses, and kayak frames tell a story of human resilience, not racial supremacy. Yet the myth persists in dark corners, a cautionary tale of how easily geography can be weaponized. Perhaps Thule greatest lesson isn't about lost lands, but about the dangers of bending history to fit cruel fantasies. The next time someone claims to uncover an ancient master race's homeland, remember, the coldest thing in the Arctic isn't the ice. It's the lie. Of all the 7 wonders of the ancient world, none sparks more controversy than the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, described as a lush, terraced paradise rising above the desert, with exotic plants spilling over tiered balconies and waterfalls cascading through its center. It's a vision of engineering brilliance except for one problem. No Babylonian text, no archaeological evidence, not even a single piece of broken pottery confirms it ever existed in Babylon. So where did this legend come from, and why does modern scholarship suspect we've been looking in the wrong ancient city all along? The earliest accounts come from Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, writing centuries after Babylon's peak. They describe an elaborate system of pumps and aqueducts lifting water from the Euphrates to irrigate the gardens, built by King Nebuchadnezzar II to soothe his homesick Median wife. But here's the catch: Nebuchadnezzar's own inscriptions, which meticulously detail his building projects, never mention gardens. Not a single brick or relief from Babylon depicts them. Even Herodotus, who gushed over Babylon's walls and ziggurates in the 5th century BCE, stays silent on the subject. This glaring absence led Dr. Stephanie Dalley of Oxford to propose a radical theory: the gardens weren't in Babylon at all. After decades studying cuneiform tablets and Assyrian engineering, she noticed something startling. The Greek descriptions matched another city entirely, Nineveh, capital of the Assyrian Empire. The kicker, an Assyrian king, Sennacherib, left detailed records of a palace without rival, with bronze screws lifting water to terraced gardens, exactly as the Greeks described. Even the geography fits. Nineveh's location along fast-flowing mountain streams made irrigation feasible, unlike arid Babylon, where lifting water from the Euphrates would have required impossible hydraulic feats. But if the gardens were real, just misplaced by history, why the confusion? Blame the fog of war. When the Persians sacked Nineveh in 612 BC, they likely carried tales of its marvels south to Babylon. By the time Greek travelers heard the stories centuries later, the locations blurred together. Supporting this, a Babylonian scribe's tablet describes Nineveh's gardens as hanging, possibly referring to overgrown vines draping from terraces. Meanwhile, recent satellite imaging reveals an intricate network of aqueducts near Mosul, ancient Nineveh, with traces of garden soil still clinging to buried channels. The debate isn't just academic, it forces us to question how history gets written and rewritten. Maybe the Hanging Gardens weren't a myth, but a casualty of imperial propaganda, erased when Babylon overshadowed its rivals. Or perhaps they're a warning about the fragility of evidence, how even the grandest wonders can vanish beneath politics and time. Either way, the mystery endures, reminding us that sometimes the most captivating stories aren't about what we've found, but what we've lost and might still rediscover. Off the jagged coast of Cornwall, where Atlantic waves crash against granite cliffs, fishermen still whisper warnings about the bells. On stormy nights, they say, the chimes of drowned churches rise through the murk, a haunting reminder of Lyonesse, the legendary kingdom swallowed by the sea. More than just another Atlantis knockoff, this Celtic lost world holds a unique place in myth. Unlike fleeting utopias, Lyonesse wasn't just home to anonymous ancients. According to medieval texts, it was the final battleground of King Arthur's knight Tristan, whose tragic love story with Isolde played out against its vanishing shores. But here's what chills historians. Geological evidence suggests Cornwall's coastline has been dramatically rearranged, and the folklore might preserve a real cataclysm. The earliest references come from 12th century troubadours who sang of Lyonesse as a fertile plain stretching 30 miles beyond today's shoreline, dotted with 140 prosperous villages. Then, on the 11th of November 1099, yes, the date is eerily precise, a monstrous storm surge drowned it all in a single night. Survivors supposedly fled to high ground, watching as their world became the treacherous reef cluster now called the Seven Stones. Skeptics dismissed this as poetic license until maritime archaeologists made a startling discovery. Sonar scans reveal submerged forest floors and human footprints preserved in peat beneath the waves off Land's End, dating to the exact period the legends describe. Even more compelling, the same storms that allegedly sank Lyonesse also reshaped England's east coast, flooding the village of Dunwich and creating Norfolk's Broads. What cements Lyonnesse's intrigue is its Arthurian connection. In the Tristan romances, the knight isn't just from Lyonesse, he dies defending it. Some scholars believe these tales encode a cultural memory of pre-Saxon Britons resisting invaders as rising seas devoured their land. Supporting this, Cornish dialect preserves unique words for underwater features like Cerrig, drowned stones, and Gwernan, submerged meadows, hinting at intimate knowledge of a lost landscape. Then there's the folklore anomaly. Unlike most flood myths attributing disaster to divine wrath, Lyonesse's sinking is blamed on a negligent gatekeeper who left open the sluices against the tide, an oddly specific detail that smells like faded truth. Modern science offers plausible explanations. Post-glacial sea level rise drowned vast swaths of Doggerland, the North Sea's prehistoric plains, between 8,000 and 5,500 years ago. But Cornwall's granite bedrock suggests more recent violent events. The Mounts Bay area near Penzance shows evidence of a massive tsunami around 1,500 BC, possibly triggered by a submarine landslide off Norway. Could Lyonesse's legend be a 1,000-year game of telephone preserving this ancient disaster? The timing fits. 11th century chronicles describe freak waves devastating Britain's coasts, including the notorious 1199 St. Marcellus flood that killed thousands in the Netherlands. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in the name itself. Lyonesse likely derives from the Cornish lethau so, meaning lion's dwelling, but also shares roots with Lothian, a Scottish region tied to Arthurian lore. This linguistic thread suggests Lyonesse wasn't just a physical place, but a cultural nexus where history, geology, and myth blurred together. Today, divers occasionally spot moss-covered stone walls beneath the Seven Stones, though storms quickly rebury them. Whether these are medieval fish traps or the last bones of Tristan's homeland, one thing's certain: the sea keeps its secrets close, and sometimes when the wind howls just right across the waves, it sounds less like a warning and more like a challenge. Along the wild coasts of Brittany, where the sea gnaws at the land like a restless beast, fishermen still cast wary glances toward the Bay of Douarnenez. Beneath those churning waves, they say, lies the remnants of Wise, a city so splendid it rivaled Paris, swallowed whole by the ocean as punishment for a princess's sin. Unlike other drowned kingdoms, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a love story, a warning, and possibly a twisted memory of real coastal disasters. The legend begins with King Gwaelod, a pious ruler who built Wise behind towering seawalls, with gates opened only at low tide to let ships pass. His daughter Dahut, though, was wild as the storm winds. She hosted decadent parties where nobles wore masks to hide their sins, and legend claims she once demanded a lover steal the key to the city's floodgates from her father's neck as proof of devotion. That night, as waves roared outside the walls, the lover, some say a devil in disguise, convinced Dahut to unlock the gates. The sea rushed in, drowning the city in moments. Gwaelod escaped on horseback, but Dahut, the waters dragged her down, transforming her into a siren whose wails still haunt the bay. What makes Wise chilling isn't just its moral, though the tale is steeped in medieval warnings about female temptation. It's the eerie overlap with historical events. Breton chronicles pin Wise's fall to the 5th century, coinciding with a period of catastrophic coastal subsidence. Modern geologists confirm that Brittany's shoreline has sunk over 15 feet since Roman times, with sudden drops triggered by earthquakes. In 2019, sonar scans revealed a sunken Roman-era road near Lyonesse, proving parts of the coast did vanish beneath the waves. Even the story's details ring true. The Quai d'Arhat stole might symbolize sluice gates, a real feature of ancient seawalls like those in the Netherlands, where mismanagement could and did cause floods. Wise's echoes ripple far beyond Brittany. Compare d'Arhat to the Babylonian goddess Ishtar, whose descent into the underworld brought destruction, or the biblical Eve, whose curiosity unleashed chaos. Flood myths from India's Manu to the Hades Raven all share a common thread: divine retribution for human arrogance. But here's the twist: while most blame gods or kings, Wise points the finger at a young woman's desire, reflecting medieval anxieties about unchecked passion. Yet folklorists note older versions where d'Arhat isn't a villain, but a pagan goddess demonized by Christian scribes. Beneath the moralizing, could Wise preserve a memory of pre-Christian Brittany, its matriarchal figures drowned by the incoming tide of new beliefs? The most tantalizing clue lies in the city's name. Wise resembles the Breton word is, meaning below, and locals still call the bay's sandbar Yaudig, the Little Wise. Fishermen report ghostly lights flickering under the surface, and in 1866, a storm exposed ancient hearths and tools before the sea reclaimed them. Whether Wise was a real city or a collective nightmare, its power endures, because every time the tide creeps higher, every time a storm surge batters the coast, the old fear whispers, humanity's grip on the land is fragile. And the ocean, like time itself, never forgets. Deep in the emerald folds of the Andes, where mist clings to mountains like a secret, a ceremony unfolded that would ignite centuries of obsession. The Muisca people, masters of goldsmithing in what's now Colombia, practiced a ritual so dazzling it birthed one of history's most persistent legends. At Lake Guatavita's glassy surface, their newly crowned ruler would coat his body in resin before being dusted head to toe in gold powder, a living sun god. As he boarded a raft piled high with treasures, priests would chant while attendants threw jewels into the water, offerings to appease the depths. Then, with a single plunge, the gilded man, El Dorado in Spanish, would wash away his golden sheath, vanishing into the lake's embrace. This wasn't a myth to the Muisca, it was sacred tradition. But when European ears caught whispers of this ceremony, they heard only one thing: a city where gold flowed like rivers. The conquistadors' hunger for El Dorado became a destructive fever. In 1537, Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada stumbled upon the Muisca's actual gold-rich settlements, but no troves matched the fantasy brewing in his mind. Undeterred, his men tortured locals for clues, burning villages when answers proved unsatisfactory. Over decades, the legend mutated. El Dorado shifted from a man to a kingdom, then to a metropolis with streets paved in gold, hidden somewhere in the uncharted Amazon. Expeditions led by figures like Sir Walter Raleigh dissolved into cannibalism and madness, leaving thousands dead in jungles so dense they swallowed bones without a trace. Modern archaeology reveals the tragic irony. The Muisca did possess staggering gold wealth, not as hoarded coins but as spiritual objects. Their masterpieces, like the legendary Muisca raft figurine depicting the Gilded Man ceremony, show gold wasn't currency to them but a conduit to the divine. The conquistadors, blinded by greed, missed the truth. The real El Dorado wasn't a place to loot, but a moment of transcendent ritual repeated across generations. Yet the lake hasn't given up all its secrets. In 1965, farmers unearthed the Monkey Man, a pre-Muisca gold figure with eerie elongated limbs, suggesting older traditions predating the Gilded Man. And in 2020, sonar scans of Lake Guatavita revealed submerged votive offerings still resting in the silt, proof that some truths remain just beyond reach, glittering in the dark like the last fragments of a dream. The legend endures not because it was false, but because it was misunderstood. El Dorado was never lost. It was simply something gold could never buy. For centuries, the Amazon rainforest was thought to be a green desert, a place where civilizations couldn't take root beneath the dense canopy. But in the last 2 decades, archaeologists have peeled back layers of earth and prejudice to uncover something astonishing: the remains of sprawling cities that once pulsed with life. These weren't just small villages, they were metropolises with roads, plazas, and earthworks so vast they're visible from space. The discovery rewrites history, proving the Amazon wasn't some primeval wilderness. It was a carefully engineered landscape, home to millions before European diseases and invasions erased their memory. The turning point came in the late 1990s when satellite images revealed geometric patterns etched into the earth across Bolivia's Llanos de Mojo's region. What looked like random clearings from the ground formed perfect circles, squares, and lines when seen from above, over 400 square miles of them. These weren't natural formations, they were the footprints of a civilization now called the Kasarab culture, which thrived between 500 and 1400 CE. Archaeologists excavating the sites found raised causeways connecting ceremonial centers, reservoirs for water management, and even evidence of fish farming on an industrial scale. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping find came in 2022, when LiDAR technology, laser scanning that pierces through vegetation, uncovered 2 massive urban centers hidden under the Bolivian canopy. Each contained stepped pyramids towering 60 feet high, surrounded by concentric rings of residential districts. These were cities built to impress, designed to dominate. Further north, in Brazil's Upper Xingu region, another revelation emerged. Indigenous oral histories had long spoken of Cuicuro cities, settlements so large it took a day to walk from one end to the other. Modern researchers dismissed these accounts as exaggeration until ground surveys and LiDAR confirmed networks of towns connected by straight, sunken roads, complete with bridges and moats. The settlements dated between 1250 and 1600 CE, home to up to 50,000 people. Even more surprising, the soil itself told a story. Terra preta, black earth patches found throughout the Amazon, isn't natural. It's human-made, a nutrient-rich compost created by ancient farmers to transform the rainforest's thin soil into fertile farmland. These people didn't just live in the jungle, they remade it. What makes these discoveries game-changing isn't just their scale, it's how they demolish the myth of the untamed Amazon. Early European explorers saw the rainforest as a hostile void, incapable of supporting complex societies. That view stuck, reinforced by racist assumptions that painted indigenous peoples as primitive hunter-gatherers. But the truth was hiding in plain sight. Spanish chronicles from the 1500s describe stumbling upon riverside cities with white walls gleaming in the sun, only for those settlements to vanish by their next visit, victims of smallpox and slave raids. Even the name Amazon comes from conquistador Francisco de Orellana's account of warrior women like the Greek myths, suggesting he encountered societies so formidable they blurred into legend. The implications ripple far beyond archaeology. If the Amazon was once a managed landscape teeming with cities and farms, it challenges modern conservation strategies that treat the rainforest as a pristine ecosystem frozen in time. Indigenous activists argue their ancestors' techniques like controlled burns and agroforestry could hold the key to sustainable development today. Meanwhile, the ruins themselves face new threats. As loggers and miners chew deeper into the jungle, they're bulldozing earthworks that survived centuries, The tragedy, we're only now realizing what was lost and might lose it all over again before we truly understand it. Perhaps the greatest lesson of these lost cities isn't about the past, but about humility. For generations, Western science dismissed indigenous knowledge as folklore. Now, lasers from space are proving those stories were maps all along. The Amazon wasn't empty, it was forgotten. And every overturned tree root, every laser scan whispers the same haunting question. How many other civilizations have we erased twice, first by conquest, then by disbelief? The stone towers of Mesa Verde cling to canyon walls like silent sentinels, their empty windows staring across the desert as if waiting for inhabitants who never returned. This is the legacy of the ancestral Pueblones, often called the Anasazi, a Navajo term meaning ancient enemies, whose flourishing civilization across the American Southwest suddenly vanished around 1300 CE. Unlike other lost cultures, they didn't just fade away. They left behind 600-year-old cliff dwellings still stocked with pots of untouched corn, sandals hung neatly on pegs, and ceremonial kivas filled with undisturbed artifacts. It's as if one day they simply walked out into the red dust and disappeared. But the truth, as always, is far more complex and far more human. For centuries, these people thrived in one of North America's harshest environments, engineering solutions that bordered on genius. Their intricate networks of reservoirs and canals captured every precious drop of rainwater. Their multi-story pueblos, built into sheer cliff faces, provided natural insulation against desert extremes. Petroglyphs etched into canyon walls depict a society deeply connected to the cosmos, tracking solstices with astonishing precision. Then, within a single generation, it all unraveled. Dendrochronology, the study of tree rings, paints a grim picture. A 50-year megadrought beginning in 1276, the worst in 8 centuries. Crops withered, springs ran dry, yet drought alone doesn't explain why they left so suddenly, or why some doors were deliberately sealed from the outside, as if to keep something in. Archaeologists sifting through the ruins have uncovered darker clues. At some sites, like the Sacred Ridge settlement in Colorado, human bones show signs of butchering and burning, evidence of violent conflict. Others reveal hastily dug mass graves. This wasn't a peaceful exodus. It suggests a society fracturing under pressure, where hunger turned neighbor against neighbor. Yet the story doesn't end in bloodshed. Linguists tracing the Tanon and Keresan languages have found threads connecting the ancestral Pueblones to modern Hopi, Zuni, and Pueblo tribes. Their oral traditions speak of a great migration guided by spiritual leaders to new lands where rain still fell. In other words, they didn't vanish. They transformed. Modern Pueblo people reject the word Anasazi, preferring Hisatsinam or simply ancestors. To them, the so-called disappearance isn't a mystery, it's a chapter in an unbroken story. At Acoma Sky City, a pueblo continuously inhabited for over 1,000 years, elders point to petroglyphs of spiral symbols found at both Mesa Verde and their own Mesotop village. These are our footprints, one Acoma artist explained, tracing the ancient carvings. We didn't go extinct, we came home. The real lesson of the ancestral Pueblones isn't about how civilizations fall, but how they adapt. When the land could no longer sustain them, they didn't cling to dying cliffs. They walked toward survival, carrying their culture in baskets and stories. Today, as the Southwest faces another historic drought, their legacy whispers across the canyons. Disappearance isn't always an ending. Sometimes it's just the first step toward a new beginning. Beneath the turquoise waves off India's western coast, where the Arabian Sea meets the Gulf of Kutch, fishermen have long hauled up strange treasures in their nets, fragments of carved stone, pottery shards encrusted with marine growth, even ancient anchors too large for their boats. These weren't random flukes of the ocean. Locals whisper they're remnants of a city lost to time. Dwarka, the legendary kingdom of Lord Krishna, said to have vanished beneath the waves after the god's departure from this world. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as pious folklore until underwater archaeologists began piecing together a spine-tingling truth. The myths might be more than metaphor. They could be memory. The Mahabharata, Hinduism's epic poem dating back over 2,000 years, describes Dwarka in vivid detail, a glittering metropolis built on reclaimed land with golden palaces, wide boulevards, and 70,000 opulent residences. Krishna ruled here, the text claims, until a curse triggered its sinking. As he abandoned the city, the sea rushed in, swallowing Dwarka whole, as if the oceans were claiming what was theirs. For generations, scholars assumed this was allegory. Then, in 1963, an accidental discovery turned everything upside down. Marine archaeologists surveying the coast near modern Dwarka stumbled upon submerged stone walls stretching over half a mile, along with stone anchors, pottery, and even a seal engraved with a three-headed animal, exactly matching descriptions from ancient texts. Subsequent expeditions revealed even more startling finds. Sonar imaging mapped out a grid-like street pattern consistent with planned urban settlements. Divers recovered artifacts dating between 1500 and 3000 BCE, precisely when Krishna's Dwarka was said to have flourished. Most compelling: a stone block weighing over 600 pounds with a drilled hole that could only have been made by advanced tools. The implications are staggering. This wasn't some small fishing village. It was a sophisticated harbor city, exactly where the legends placed it, but the real twist lies in the geology. Core samples from the seabed show evidence of sudden subsidence around 1500 BC, a catastrophic event that could have sunk entire city blocks in hours. This aligns eerily with Hindu texts describing Dwarka's demise as swift and violent. Even more striking, the underwater ruins aren't alone. Onshore excavations at modern Dwarka have uncovered a second, older city layer beneath the current one, proof of continuous habitation spanning millennia. Was this the original Dwarka's survivors rebuilding atop the drowned ruins of their past? Not everyone's convinced. Skeptics argue the underwater structures could be natural formations or later port installations. The absence of definitive inscriptions linking the site to Krishna leaves room for doubt. Yet the cultural weight is undeniable. For millions of Hindus, Dwarka's discovery isn't just archaeological vindication, it's spiritual affirmation. Pilgrims flock to the coast, staring at the horizon where waves now hide what scriptures once proclaimed. The sea keeps its secrets close, but every storm that churns the seabed seems to whisper the same thing. Some myths aren't just stories. They're shadows of a world we're only beginning to remember. Deep in the Mosquisha rainforest of Honduras, where jaguars stalk through emerald shadows and vines tangle like living ropes, indigenous Pech and Tawaka tribes have passed down stories for generations about a sacred white city hidden in the jungle's heart. They call it La Ciudad Blanca, the White City, a place so ancient its stone temples gleamed like bone beneath the canopy, abandoned long before the Spanish conquest. Conquistador Hernán Cortés himself wrote tantalizingly to King Charles V in 1526 about rumors of a metropolis exceeding Mexico in riches, though he never found it. For 5 centuries, explorers hacked through snake-infested swamps and succumbed to disease, chasing whispers of a civilization lost to time. Then, in 2012, a team armed with lasers and satellite imagery announced they'd found something extraordinary. But was it really the legendary White City or something even stranger? The breakthrough came from an unlikely source: airborne LiDAR technology, the same laser mapping that revealed lost Amazonian cities. Skimming over the Mosquisha's impenetrable canopy, the lasers peeled back layers of vegetation to reveal what appeared to be plazas, pyramids, and even a sprawling stone sculpture of a wood jaguar, a mythical half-human, half-beast figure common in Mesoamerican art. Archaeologists on the ground later uncovered over 50 artifacts, including stone seats carved with intricate zoomorphic designs and vessels decorated with serpent motifs. Carbon dating placed the site's peak between 1000 and 1400 CE, centuries before European contact. The evidence suggested a sophisticated society with trade links stretching as far as the Maya lowlands, yet utterly distinct from any known culture. But here's where the mystery deepens. The Musquisha ruins don't match the traditional white city legend perfectly. Tribal elders describe a single sacred metropolis, while LiDAR scans show not one but at least 5 major settlements, with an estimated population in the tens of thousands. This wasn't just a lone city, it was a forgotten network of urban centers, now dubbed the Lost City of the Monkey God after a local myth. Even more puzzling are the artifacts themselves. Some feature artistic styles reminiscent of the Olmec, while others resemble Toltec craftsmanship, suggesting this civilization might have been a cultural bridge between Mesoamerica and South America. Yet no written records mention it, leaving archaeologists to piece together clues from pottery shards and soil samples. The jungle guards its secrets fiercely. The same dense foliage that preserved the ruins also makes excavation agonizingly slow. Teams must contend with venomous fer-de-lance snakes, swarms of disease-carrying insects, and torrential rains that erase trails overnight. In 2015, several expedition members contracted a rare, flesh-eating parasite, forcing a medical evacuation. It's as if the Musquisha itself resists revelation. Meanwhile, indigenous tribes warn that the city is protected by spirits, a belief that takes on eerie resonance when researchers report equipment failures and inexplicable sounds echoing from the undergrowth at night. What makes this discovery paradigm-shifting isn't just the scale of the ruins, but what they imply about pre-Columbian history. For decades, scholars assumed Central America's rainforests were too hostile for large-scale civilizations outside the Maya realm. The Musquisha cities prove otherwise. Their builders mastered hydraulics, terracing steep hillsides to prevent erosion, and constructing reservoirs that still hold water today. Most astonishingly, LiDAR reveals they deliberately shaped the landscape not just for survival, but with an almost artistic precision, aligning structures with celestial events. This wasn't a marginal culture clinging to existence. It was a thriving civilization that chose to vanish, leaving behind empty plazas and silent statues, their stories swallowed by roots and rain. As archaeologists painstakingly uncover more fragments, a jade pendant here, a ceremonial dagger there, the White City's true name and purpose remain elusive. Maybe it was a religious center abandoned after some apocalyptic prophecy. Maybe it fell to warfare or climate shifts. Or maybe, as the Petch elders insist, it was never truly lost, just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. One thing's certain, beneath the Musquisha's green veil, history is being rewritten, one laser scan at a time. And somewhere in those tangled shadows, stone faces watch, keeping their secrets for a little while longer. Beneath the frozen wastes of the Arctic and the windswept plateaus of Tibet, legends whisper of a world within our world, a kingdom of unimaginable age hidden deep beneath the Earth's crust. This is Agartha, the mythical subterranean realm said to be bathed in an eternal glow, its cities carved from luminous crystal, its inhabitants gifted with wisdom far beyond our own. Unlike lost continents swallowed by the sea, Agartha's mystery runs vertical. A civilization not vanished but concealed, waiting beneath our feet. The concept of a hollow earth isn't new. Ancient Tibetan Buddhist texts speak of Shambhala's sister realm, a network of tunnels and caverns where enlightened beings guard sacred knowledge. The Sanskrit epic Ramayana describes a dark, glittering underworld called Patala, home to advanced technologies and serpentine deities. But Agartha as we know it today took shape in the 19th century, when French occultist Alexander Saint-Yves d'Alveda claimed to have received telepathic messages from its rulers, hidden sovereigns who supposedly guided human evolution from the shadows. His wild theories caught fire among European mystics, blending with emerging hollow earth pseudoscience. By the 1920s, explorers like Nicholas Roerich were scouring the Himalayas for hidden entrances, convinced Agartha's portals lay somewhere in the icy peaks. Then came the Nazis. Heinrich Himmler's Roanoke division, obsessed with proving Aryan supremacy through occult archaeology, sent expeditions to Tibet and Antarctica, hell-bent on finding Agartha's rumored tunnels. Their logic was twisted but eerily specific. If an underground master race existed, its technology could win the war. This dark chapter stained Agartha's lore forever, tethering it to extremist ideologies. Yet the myth endured, morphing again in the Cold War era when ufologists proposed that flying saucers weren't extraterrestrial, but Agarthan launched from hidden polar bases. Modern geology, of course, refutes hollow Earth theories. Seismic waves reveal our planet's layered interior, with no room for inner suns or sprawling cavern cities. But here's what's fascinating. Science has confirmed vast subterranean ecosystems. The deep hot biosphere theory proposes that microbial life thrives miles underground, while cave systems like Vietnam's Hang Son Doong prove entire jungles can exist beneath the surface. Satellite scans even show unexplained cavities beneath Antarctica's ice, not enough to house a civilization, but enough to keep the myth alive. Perhaps Agartha's real power lies in metaphor. Across cultures, from the Greek underworld to the Cherokee's world below, humans have imagined realms beneath us as places of trial, transformation, or divine knowledge. In an age where we've mapped every mountain and scanned every ocean trench, the idea that anything, could still lie undiscovered taps into a primal longing. The Earth's final frontier might not be space, but the uncharted depths beneath our feet. Whether as spiritual symbol or sci-fi fantasy, Agartha endures because it offers the rarest of treasures in a world stripped of mystery, the thrill of the unknown glowing just out of reach in the dark. Open any pre-19th century map, and you'll spot it lurking at the edges. Tartaria, a sprawling empire stretching from Siberia to North America, labeled with Gothic fonts and ornate cartouches. Then, abruptly, the name vanishes from official records as if scrubbed clean. To most historians, Tartaria was simply an outdated European term for Central Asia's nomadic regions. But in the shadowy corners of the internet, a far wilder theory has taken root. That Tartaria was a globe-spanning supercivilization, wiped from history by some cataclysmic reset, its marvels falsely attributed to others. This isn't just alternative history, it's a full-blown digital folklore, blending architectural anomalies, vintage maps, and apocalyptic speculation into something eerily compelling. The modern Tartaria conspiracy hinges on three puzzling threads. First, the architecture, grandiose 19th century buildings like the Smithsonian Castle or St. Petersburg's Winter Palace exhibit what theorists call Tartarian-style ornate facades, star-shaped fortifications, and alleged use of an unknown glass-like building material. These structures, they claim, couldn't have been built with period technology. Second, the maps. Old atlases depict Tartaria as a unified territory well into the 1700s, sometimes even showing it controlling parts of colonial America. And third, the mud flood theory, a hypothesized global disaster that buried lower floors of buildings in sediment, with survivors repurposing the upper levels. Together, these form a seductive narrative, a powerful empire dissolved by calamity, its history rewritten by the victors. But how did this idea escape niche forums and flood TikTok and YouTube? The answer lies in the gaps of mainstream history. Many Tartarian buildings were constructed during periods of technological transition, like the Industrial Revolution, when cranes and steam power enabled ambitious projects. Their rapid rise does seem improbable if you don't account for advances like Portland cement or prefabricated iron components. Meanwhile, the empire's disappearance from maps coincides with European colonial powers dividing Central Asia, a bureaucratic erasure, not a physical one. Yet in an age where institutions are distrusted, the idea that they're hiding the truth resonates. The aesthetic of old maps and sepia-toned ruins lends itself to viral sharing, while the notion of a lost golden age taps into millenarian nostalgia. Critics point out glaring flaws. Tartaria's supposed territory spans cultures with no shared language, currency, or artifacts. The mud flood ignores basic geology. Sediment layers form over millennia, not overnight. And those too advanced buildings, architects have meticulously documented their construction through invoices, blueprints, and worker diaries. But debunking misses why the myth thrives. Tartaria isn't just about history, it's about the thrill of seeing the familiar world as a palimpsest with hidden truths lurking beneath. It turns every neoclassical courthouse into a potential relic of something grander, every outdated map into a coded message. Perhaps the most fascinating twist is how the legend evolved. Early 20th century theosophists like Madame Blavatsky referenced Tartaria as the homeland of a root race, a concept later warped by Nazi occultists. Today's online reinvention strips the racism but keeps the mystery, rebranding Tartaria as a peaceful, technologically advanced utopia. Artists and writers have leaned in, crafting elaborate alternate histories where airships patrol Tartarian skies. The irony, in trying to expose a cover-up, theorists have created something arguably more valuable, a collaborative mythos where anyone can play archaeologist, decoding the past through dreamlike logic. What does Tartaria's persistence say about us? Maybe it's a reaction to the sterile certainty of textbooks, or a way to make sense of rapid urban change. Either way, it proves that history isn't just facts, it's the stories we tell to fill the voids between them. And sometimes the most compelling ruins aren't made of stone but of questions. While Atlantis dominates discussions of lost continents, its Pacific counterpart, Mu, lurks in the shadows with an even shakier foundation. The story begins with James Churchward, a British-born adventurer who claimed in the 1920s to have uncovered ancient tablets in India revealing the existence of a sunken civilization spanning the Pacific. According to Churchward, Mu was a vast continent that sank 12,000 years ago after a cataclysmic volcanic eruption, taking with it an advanced society that supposedly birthed all later civilizations. His books, filled with dramatic illustrations of pyramid-topped cities and white-robed priests, became sensations. But peel back the layers and you'll find a tale less about archaeology and more about the allure of filling blank spaces on the map with grand fiction. Churchward's sources raise immediate red flags. He insisted a Hindu priest taught him to decipher the Knockle tablets, artifacts he said originated in Mu, yet no scholar has ever verified these tablets existed. His translations borrow heavily from Mayan codices, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and even the works of Augustus Le Plongeon, another 19th century fantasist who believed Maya ruins held proof of Atlantis. The inconsistencies pile up quickly. Churchward placed Mu everywhere from the Marianas Trench to Easter Island, describing technologies like anti-gravity crystals and wireless energy that sound suspiciously like Nikola Tesla's contemporary experiments. Worst of all, his so-called proof relied on selective interpretations of Pacific Island myths, stripping them of cultural context to fit his narrative. Modern geology delivers the fatal blow. Plate tectonics confirm the Pacific Basin has been ocean for hundreds of millions of years. No continent could have existed there in human timescales. Core samples show no signs of the catastrophic subsidence Churchward described. Even the myths he cited, like Hawaii's Cumulipo chant or Rapa Nui's oral traditions, speak of cyclical creation and destruction, not a singular lost homeland. What's revealing is how Mu's legend shifted over time. Early 20th century esoteric groups like the Theosophists adopted it as the homeland of a root race, blending racist pseudoscience with spiritualism. Later, neo-Nazi groups warped it into Aryan propaganda, while New Age circles rebranded Mu as a utopia of peace and harmony. Yet Mu's persistence reveals something fascinating about human psychology. The Pacific does hold real mysteries: the monumental moai of Easter Island, Nan Madol's submerged ruins in Micronesia, the vast Polynesian navigation networks that settled islands across thousands of miles. These authentic wonders don't need fictional continents to explain them, but faced with the ocean's sheer scale, we crave unifying myths, stories that tie scattered fragments into a grander whole. Mu endures not because it's true, but because the Pacific's true history of independent cultures mastering one of Earth's harshest environments is somehow more staggering than any lost continent fantasy. The real marvel isn't a sunken civilization. It's how real people crossed the world's largest ocean with nothing but stars and courage, leaving echoes in every wave and wind. The desert wind howls across the empty quarter, the vast sea of sand that swallows southern Arabia. Here, where dunes rise like frozen waves and the sun bleaches bones to dust, Bedouin storytellers whisper of Iram, a city so wicked that Allah himself erased it from the earth. The Quran's Surah Al-Fajr describes it in chilling terms: Iram of the pillars, the like of which had never been created in the lands, a place of towering architecture and boundless arrogance, where the Ad people, descendants of Noah's wayward grandson, defied divine warnings until a sandstorm howled for 7 nights, burying them alive beneath the shifting sands. For centuries, scholars dismissed Iram as mere moral allegory. Then, in the early 1990s, a team of archaeologists following ancient frankincense trade routes stumbled upon something extraordinary: the ruins of a mighty fortress city, its walls swallowed by the very dunes described in legend. The discovery centered around Yuba, a fabled trading hub referenced in Ptolemy's 2nd century maps and mentioned in 1001 Nights as a haunt of Jennies. Satellite images revealed camel caravan tracks converging on a remote Amani site called Shisar, where excavations exposed a massive octagonal fortress with towers 30 feet high. Pottery shards and incense burners dated the settlement to between 3000 BC and the 1st century CE, precisely when Iram's glory would have peaked. Most compelling, the ground itself told a story of sudden disaster. The fortress's foundation rested atop a colossal limestone cavern which collapsed without warning, dragging much of the city into the earth. To the Bedouin, this wasn't just geology, it was divine retribution made manifest, yet the connections between Iram and Yuba remain tantalizingly ambiguous. Pre-Islamic poetry describes Iram's lofty pillars as a marvel of engineering, possibly referencing the monumental architecture of the Nabateans, whose rock-carved city of Petra lies northwest. Others suggest Iram's descriptions might echo the deeds of real-life Arabian kings like Shaddad ibn Ad, whose inscriptions boast of building a paradise on earth. The truth may lie in the desert's uncanny ability to blur memory and reality. Sandstorms known as haboobs can swallow entire caravans in minutes, leaving no trace, a phenomenon that could transform a real city's collapse into a cautionary legend over generations. What makes Iram's legacy endure isn't just its moral weight, but the eerie resonance between myth and archaeology. The ruins at Shisar show signs of extravagant wealth: imported Roman glass, fragments of Indian teak, evidence of a society that prospered by controlling the frankincense trade. Yet greed may have been its undoing. Overexploitation of the region's scarce groundwater could have destabilized the limestone beneath them, triggering the collapse. Sound familiar? It's a warning as old as civilization itself. The very pillars of hubris can become the weight that drags a kingdom under. Today, as new deserts expand across the globe and ancient aquifers run dry, Iram's story feels less like a buried relic and more like a reflection staring back at us from the sand-polished mirror of time. Off the coast of Wales, where the Irish Sea churns against the rugged shoreline of Cardigan Bay, fishermen tell of a sorrowful bell that tolls beneath the waves, a mournful reminder of Cantre'r Gwaelod, the lowland 100. This drowned kingdom wasn't swallowed in a single cataclysm like Atlantis, but lost inch by inch to the creeping sea, its final moments marked by a drunken gatekeeper's fatal mistake. According to medieval Welsh lore, this fertile land stretched 20 miles beyond the current coast, protected by a system of dikes and sluice gates. Its downfall came one stormy night when the guardian tasked with tending the floodgates, a man named Sethanin, drank himself into oblivion. As the tide rose, no one closed the gates. The sea poured in, drowning farms, palaces, and an entire civilization beneath the waves. To this day, locals claim that when the tide pulls just right, you can still hear the church bells of Cantre'r Gwaelod ringing beneath the water. But how much of this legend is rooted in reality? The answer lies in the mudflats and salt marshes of Cardigan Bay. Modern geological surveys reveal a submerged landscape that aligns eerily with the myths. Sonar imaging has mapped out a network of sunken peat beds, ancient tree stumps, and even human-made wooden trackways dating back over 6,000 years, proof that people once lived where there's now only open water. The most striking discovery came in 2014, when archaeologists identified a line of fossilized tree trunks near the village of Borth, their roots still anchored in soil that hasn't seen sunlight for millennia. These drowned forests, exposed during extreme low tides, confirm that what's now seabed was once dry land, thick with oak and hazel. What's fascinating isn't just that the land sank, but how it happened. Unlike sudden tsunamis or earthquakes, Cantre'r Gwaelod's demise was a slow-motion tragedy, a victim of post-ice age sea level rise compounded by a phenomenon called isostatic rebound. As glaciers melted 12,000 years ago, the weight lifting off Scotland caused Wales to tilt slightly, like a seesaw, submerging its western coast centimeter by centimeter over generations. Core samples from the bay's sediment tell a heartbreaking story, layers of cultivated soil abruptly capped by marine sand, as if the sea had politely but firmly drawn a blanket over someone else's home. The legend's durability speaks to its emotional truth. Unlike tales of divine wrath or hubris, Cantre'r Gwaelod's drowning feels achingly human, a failure born of negligence rather than malice. Its gatekeeper isn't a villain, but a flawed figure whose weakness resonates across centuries. That vulnerability makes the story stick. Today, as climate change threatens coastal communities worldwide, Cantre'r Gwaelod's bells seem to toll not just for a lost past, but for a precarious future. The next time you stand on a shoreline watching the tide creep imperceptibly higher, remember, the sea never forgets, and neither do the stories of those who underestimated it. Somewhere between mist and memory, where the lines of history blur into legend, lies Avalon, the mythical island where King Arthur's sword Excalibur was forged, where his wounds were tended after the Battle of Camlan, and where, some say, he still sleeps, waiting to return in Britain's darkest hour. Described in medieval texts as a place of eternal twilight, where apple trees bore golden fruit and priestesses practiced healing arts beyond mortal understanding, Avalon straddles the boundary between otherworld and earth. But was it ever more than a metaphor for the afterlife, a poetic representation of eternal rest? Or could this enchanted isle have roots in a real location, its mysteries half buried in the marshes and hills of England? The earliest mentions of Avalon emerge in the 12th century, woven into Geoffrey of Monmouth's Vita Merlini. Here it's called Insula Avalonis, a paradise where Arthur is carried by the enchantress Morgan Le Fay to be healed, a detail later echoed in Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur. The name itself holds clues. Avalon likely derives from the Welsh word afal, meaning apple, tying it to Celtic myths of blessed islands like Emain a Blach, where otherworldly orchards granted immortality. This wasn't just a literary invention. The Celts revered apples as symbols of wisdom and rebirth, and the idea of a healing sanctuary aligns with pre-Christian traditions of sacred groves and priestess-led shrines. But then there's Glastonbury. In the late 12th century, monks at Glastonbury Abbey made a jaw-dropping claim. Their abbey stood atop Avalon itself. Their proof, a supposed exhumation of Arthur and Guinevere's bones beneath an ancient oak, complete with a lead cross inscribed in archaic script. Never mind that the cross conveniently surfaced just as the abbey needed funds after a devastating fire. The story stuck. Glastonbury's landscape fed the legend. Before drainage projects in the Middle Ages, the area was a maze of waterways transforming the Tor, that striking, solitary hill, into an island during floods. Locals still call it the Isle of Glass, a possible echo of Avalon's crystalline mists. Even the abbey's famed thorn tree, said to sprout from Joseph of Arimathea's staff, ties into the apple motif, its winter blossoms symbolizing life persisting against the odds. The debate between myth and geography takes a fascinating turn with modern archaeology. Excavations around Glastonbury have unearthed evidence of Iron Age lake villages and Roman-era healing springs, suggesting the site was indeed a center of therapeutic pilgrimage long before Arthur's name echoed through history. Then there's the Somerset Level's unique ecology. The region's peat bogs preserve traces of prehistoric causeways and ritual offerings, proof that ancient Britons viewed these wetlands as liminal spaces, doorways between worlds. Could Avalon's legend be a Christianized memory of these older beliefs, a blending of Celtic reverence for sacred waters and medieval longing for a lost golden age? Yet skeptics raise compelling counterpoints. Avalon's descriptions shift dramatically across texts, sometimes an island, sometimes a valley, sometimes a floating citadel. This inconsistency suggests it was less a place than an evolving symbol, representing everything from spiritual transcendence to political idealism. Even Glastonbury's connection feels suspect. Earlier Welsh tales mention Arthur's final resting place as Unis a Falach, but there's no definitive link to Somerset. The monk's discovery reeks of medieval PR, a way to boost tourism or, more accurately, pilgrim revenue with a royal corpse stunt. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the mist. Avalon endures not because it fits neatly into maps or timelines, but because it answers a deeper human yearning, for healing, for second chances, for heroes who never truly die. Whether it was inspired by Glastonbury's waterlogged hills or spun entirely from the loom of imagination, its power persists. Every year, visitors still flock to the Tor at dawn, watching the fog curl over the levels like a veil waiting to be lifted. Maybe that's Avalon's real magic, not in proving it existed, but in keeping us wondering, searching, hoping to glimpse something just beyond reach, an island not lost to time but hidden within it. One summer day in the 12th century, villagers in the small English town of Woolpit made a discovery that would baffle historians for centuries. While tending their fields near the Wolf Pits, the very ditches that gave the village its name, they stumbled upon two children huddled in terror. Their skin was a vivid, unnatural green, their clothing made from strange fabrics no weaver could identify. When the villagers offered them food, they refused all but raw beans, which they devoured with desperate hunger. Even stranger, the children spoke in a language no one recognized. Their story, recorded by medieval chroniclers like William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall, remains one of history's most perplexing mysteries. Were these green-skinned visitors victims of famine, products of folklore, or something far more otherworldly? The children's ordeal only deepened as they slowly adapted to life in Woolpit. The boy, frail and despondent, died within months, but the girl survived, eventually losing her green hue as she learned to eat normal food and speak English. When questioned about their origins, she described a place she called St. Martin's Land, where twilight reigned eternal and all the people shared her emerald complexion. She spoke of crossing an enormous cavern after hearing bells, a detail that echoes folklore about subterranean realms. Some scholars suggest she might have been describing the lost Flemish enclaves of Norfolk, where persecuted weavers hid in underground tunnels during King Henry II's purge. The green skin, a symptom of hypochromic anemia, a condition caused by extreme malnutrition that can give sufferers a sickly greenish pallor. The beans they ate, likely broad beans, are rich in iron, which could explain their recovery. But the mystery thickens when you examine the historical context. Woolpit lay near the Abbey of Bury St. Edmunds, a hub for medieval trade and storytelling. Some theorists propose the children were orphans from a Flemish immigrant community, their strange appearance exaggerated by local superstitions. Yet the girl's description of a sunless world doesn't match Flanders. Another angle points to ancient British folklore. Celtic myths are rife with tales of fairy children stolen from their realms, often described as sickly or discolored when thrust into the human world. The green hue might symbolize their otherness, a visual cue in a society where color carried deep symbolic meaning. Then there's the extraterrestrial angle. Modern UFO enthusiasts argue the children's green skin, unfamiliar language, and accounts of a twilight world sound eerily like descriptions of alien encounters. The cavern they mentioned, a wormhole or interdimensional portal. While this theory stretches credulity, it speaks to how enduringly the tale captivates the imagination. Even Carl Sagan referenced the green children in his exploration of historical UFO accounts, noting how easily folklore can blur with potential evidence of the unexplained. Perhaps the most compelling interpretation lies in the collision of history and myth. The 12th century was a time of upheaval, crop failures, civil wars, and mass migrations. The green children might have been refugees, their true origins lost to trauma. Their story, filtered through the lens of medieval chroniclers, became a canvas for the fears and wonders of the age. What makes this legend endure isn't just its strangeness, but its humanity. In a world where borders between the known and unknown were thin, the green children were a living riddle. And like all good mysteries, they refused to surrender their secrets, leaving us to wonder what truths might still lurk in the shadows of history. Deep in the Libyan desert, where the sands stretch endlessly under a merciless sun, Bedouin elders speak in hushed tones of Zazura, a white-walled city hidden among the dunes, its gates guarded by sleeping giants, its streets lined with untold treasures. Unlike other lost cities that vanished in cataclysms, Zazura is said to wait patiently, revealing itself only to those chosen by fate or folly. The legend varies with each telling. Some describe it as a paradise where palm trees bow under the weight of ripe fruit, while others warn of curses laid upon intruders. But one detail remains constant: the city is always white, gleaming like a mirage against the copper sands, a beacon for the desperate and the dreamers. Europeans first caught wind of Zazura in the 19th century, when desert explorers like Hassanin Bey and Ralph Bagnold transcribed fragments of the myth from Bedouin guides. What began as campfire stories soon became an obsession for colonial powers. The British, French, and Italians all launched expeditions, convinced Zazura held the key to controlling North Africa. They carried maps scribbled with cryptic clues: follow the bird with the arrow in its beak, or seek the valley where the moon casts no shadow. These weren't just directions, they were riddles wrapped in the cadence of oral tradition, designed to frustrate outsiders. The most intriguing twist: Zazura might not be entirely fictional. Satellite imagery has revealed the remnants of ancient lakes and river systems beneath the Sahara, proving this wasteland was once a lush network of waterways. In 2010, archaeologists discovered the ruins of a fortified settlement in southwestern Libya, its walls eerily pale against the sand, dating to the Garamantian civilization, a people who thrived between 500 BCE and 500 CE. Could this be the kernel of truth behind the legend? The Garamantes were masters of hydraulic engineering, tapping underground aquifers to create oases in the desert. Their collapse from overexploitation mirrors Zazura's recurring motif of a paradise lost to greed. Yet Zazura's power lies beyond archaeology. For the Bedouin, it's not just a place but a test. The city is said to appear only to those who have lost everything, wanderers stripped of pride and possessions. European treasure hunters weighed down by rifles and entitlement never stood a chance. This moral thread weaves through other desert myths, from the Quran's Aram to the Tuareg's Timbuktu tales, all warning that the desert rewards humility, not force. Modern adventurers still comb the dunes armed with GPS and ground-penetrating radar, but the Sahara guards its secrets well. Sandstorms erase tracks within hours and mirages toy with perception. Perhaps Zazora's greatest lesson isn't about finding what's lost, but recognizing that some mysteries are meant to remain veiled, not because they don't exist, but because their value lies in the search itself. After all, in a world where every inch has been mapped and monetized, what could be more precious than a dream that refuses to be cornered? The year was 1587, and the air hung thick with desperation on Roanoke Island. Governor John White had just returned from England, bringing supplies to the struggling colony he'd left behind 3 years earlier. But as his boat scraped ashore, the only sound was the wind through the pines. The settlement stood empty, homes intact, tables set, personal belongings neatly arranged as if the entire population had simply stepped out for an evening stroll and never returned. The single clue, the word Croatoan carved into a post and crow etched into a nearby tree. No crosses, no signs of struggle, just those cryptic letters hanging in the silence like an unfinished sentence. This wasn't just a disappearance, it was history's most haunting cold case. What makes Roanoke's vanishing so chilling isn't the mystery itself, but the eerie precision of its staging. The colonists, including White's own granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas, had planned for his return. They'd agreed to leave a Maltese cross as a distress signal if forced to flee. Yet the absence of that symbol suggests a deliberate departure, not a panicked retreat. Theories spiral from the plausible to the paranormal. Local tribes like the Croatoans, whose name appeared on the post, denied any violence, and later European explorers reported sightings of fair-skinned natives wearing Elizabethan clothing, possible descendants of assimilated settlers. But others whisper of darker fates, Spanish raiders from Florida, a starving exodus gone wrong, or even a supernatural force preying on the unprepared. Modern archaeology adds tantalizing layers to the enigma. In 2020, excavations near Cape Creek uncovered a fragment of a 16th century English sword hilt among Croatoan artifacts, alongside slate writing tablets and a ring that may have belonged to a Roanoke colonist. Soil analysis reveals the settlers likely split into smaller groups, some venturing 50 miles inland to Native American villages, a strategic dispersal that aligns with survival tactics. Yet the truth may lie in a more mundane tragedy. Tree ring data from the period shows the worst drought in 800 years gripped the region during the colony's tenure. Crops would have failed, water sources vanished. In that light, Croatoan wasn't a riddle, it was an address, a plea for reunion scrawled by people pushed to the brink. Roanoke's legacy endures because it mirrors our deepest fears: abandonment, the fragility of footholds in unfamiliar lands, the terror of being erased without explanation. Every vanished settlement since, from the Donner Party to the Mary Celeste, lives in its shadow. But perhaps the real lesson isn't in the mystery, but in the hubris that created it. The colonists arrived expecting to conquer, only to be humbled by nature's indifference. Their empty homes stand as monuments not to a puzzle, but to a truth we still struggle to accept. That wilderness keeps its own counsel, and not all stories get endings. In the winter of 1165, a letter arrived in Rome that sent shockwaves through medieval Europe. Penned in flawless Latin on shimmering parchment, it claimed to be from a monarch whose wealth dwarfed all Christendom. Prester John, a Christian king ruling an empire of unimaginable splendor somewhere beyond the known world. His domain, he wrote, stretched from the ruins of Babylon to the Tower of Babel itself, filled with rivers of gold, forests of spice trees, and even the fountain of youth. His armies counted among their ranks giants and cyclopes, yet they bowed to this priest-king who traced his lineage to the Magi who visited Christ. For centuries, this tantalizing myth would drive kings, popes, and explorers to scour continents in search of a kingdom that never was, yet in the process, they'd redraw the map of the world. The origins of the Prester John legend reveal as much about medieval Europe's fears as its fantasies. The letter, likely a forgery crafted by a clever scribe in the Crusader states, emerged at a time of crisis. Muslim forces under Saladin were gaining ground in the Holy Land, and Christian rulers desperately hoped for an ally to encircle their enemies. Prester John's letter promised just that, a powerful Christian realm in the east ready to join forces. But the legend didn't spring from nothing. It wove together threads of older travelers' tales, like the writings of the 4th century Bishop Eusebius, who mentioned Christian communities in India, and garbled accounts of the Nestorian churches spread across Central Asia. Even the name Prester hints at its roots, a corruption of presbyter, or elder, reflecting medieval Europe's fuzzy understanding of Christianity beyond its borders. As the myth spread, it proved astonishingly adaptable. When Mongol horsemen under Genghis Khan stormed westward in the 13th century, Europeans initially panicked. Then, upon hearing rumors these invaders had defeated Muslim caliphates, spun a new narrative. Perhaps the Mongols were Prester John's vassals, clearing a path for Christendom. Embassies like those of Giovanni da Pian del Carpine trekked to the Mongol court, half diplomatic missions, half treasure hunts for the vanished king. Later, as Portuguese navigators edged down Africa's coast in the 1400s, the legend pivoted again. Now, Prester John's kingdom was said to lurk in Ethiopia, where the ancient Aksumite Empire had indeed practiced Christianity since the 4th century. Vasco da Gama's crew carried letters for this mythical monarch when they rounded the Cape of Good Hope, and Portuguese explorers would later mistake the stone churches of Lalibela for his lost capital. The cruel irony, Prester John's greatest legacy wasn't a discovered kingdom, but the discoveries made while chasing his ghost. The quest for his empire drove European exploration into uncharted territories, from the jungles of the Congo to the peaks of the Himalayas. It accelerated the age of discovery as monarchs funded expeditions hoping to find an ally, or at least his fabled riches. Even when the myth crumbled under the weight of reality, its influence lingered. The very idea of a hidden Christian kingdom shaped early European encounters with non-Western cultures, coloring everything from Columbus's expectations in the Americas to Jesuit missions in Japan. What makes the Prester John story endure isn't just its audacity, but its humbling lesson about the power of belief. For over 400 years, the brightest minds of Europe, kings, cartographers, scholars, convinced themselves a phantom empire was real, bending geography and logic to fit their hopes. In that sense, Prester John's kingdom wasn't entirely lost. It existed exactly where it needed to, in the space between what we wish for and what we're willing to see. And sometimes, as history shows, chasing a mirage can lead you farther than clinging to the shore. Along the palm-fringed coasts of Tamil Nadu, where fishermen mend their nets to the rhythm of crashing waves, elders speak of a time when the ocean's reach wasn't so vast. Their ancient Sangam poems, etched on palm leaves 2,000 years ago, spin tales of rooters, a sprawling continent that once bridged India to lands beyond, now swallowed by the insatiable sea. Unlike Atlantis or Mu, this lost world wasn't just a footnote in philosophical texts. It was the beating heart of a civilization so advanced, its people supposedly harnessed the winds for energy and carved temples from living rock before the waters claimed them. The details are vivid. Rooters was a crescent-shaped landmass, rich in pearls and precious stones, its rulers dispensing justice beneath fragrant champak trees. But what makes this myth extraordinary isn't just its grandeur, it's how eerily it mirrors another sunken land we've already explored, Lemuria. The parallels are impossible to ignore. Both routers and Lemuria were said to connect India with Africa and beyond, acting as cultural and trade hubs before catastrophic floods. Tamil scholars even refer to routers as Kumari Kandam, a name echoing the Sanskrit Kumarika Konda, which early 20th century theosophists linked to their version of Lemuria. But here's where the stories diverge. While Lemuria emerged from colonial-era geology as a hypothetical land bridge to explain lemur fossils, routers springs from indigenous tradition, a living memory preserved in dance, poetry, and temple art. The Sangam texts describe its submergence in chillingly specific terms. 3 successive deluges reduced the land to fragments, with survivors fleeing to present-day Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka, carrying with them the seeds of Dravidian culture. Modern science adds tantalizing context. Satellite surveys reveal a submerged ridge called the Adams Bridge between India and Sri Lanka, a chain of shoals and limestone shoals that some geologists argue could be the remnants of a land connection eroded by rising seas around 7,000 years ago. Even more compelling, marine archaeologists have uncovered underwater ruins near India's Pumpuha coast, including stone structures and pottery shards dating back to 1500 BC, lying 60 feet beneath the waves. These aren't proof of routers itself, but they confirm that the Tamil coastline has indeed been reshaped by millennia of rising oceans, exactly the kind of event that could birth such legends. Yet routers' cultural footprint might be its most enduring legacy. Tamil nationalists and spiritualists have long claimed it as the cradle of their civilization, arguing that its advanced knowledge systems birthed everything from yoga to early engineering. Some even link it to the mythical Pandya kings, said to have ruled a vast pre-flood empire. Skeptics dismiss this as romantic revisionism, pointing out that the Sangam poems are poetic, not historical records. But the emotional resonance is undeniable. For many Tamils, routers isn't just a lost land, it's a symbol of resilience, a metaphor for how cultures adapt when their worlds are literally washed away. The question lingers, why do so many seafaring cultures, from the Tamils to the Greeks to the Polynesians, share these stories of drowned homelands? Perhaps because oceans have always been both givers and takers of life. Rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age swallowed vast coastal settlements worldwide, events so traumatic they imprinted themselves in collective memory. Routers, then, might be more than myth or geological accident. It could be a cautionary tale whispered across generations, warning that even the mightiest civilizations are no match for the tide. As modern coastlines again face the threat of rising waters, these ancient stories suddenly feel less like echoes of the past and more like whispers from our future. Deep in the forests of Russia's Nizhny Novgorod region, where the waters of Lake Svetloya glimmer like liquid silver, pilgrims gather every summer to walk barefoot around its shores in silent prayer. They come seeking Cantre'r, the invisible city, a holy place said to lie just beneath the lake's surface, its golden church domes and white stone walls preserved in perfect stillness. According to legend, this sacred city vanished in the 13th century as Mongol invaders closed in, swallowed by the earth itself to escape desecration. But unlike other lost cities, Cantre'r wasn't destroyed. It was hidden, accessible only to the pure of heart. The story begins with Prince Georgy Vsevolodovich, who built Cantre'r as a refuge for the faithful, a place where the church's teachings could flourish untainted by sin. When Batu Khan's Golden Horde descended upon Russia in 1238, their scouts stumbled upon the smaller town of Mali Cantre'r and burned it to the ground. Tracking fleeing townspeople toward the forests, the Mongols expected to find a second city ripe for plunder. Instead, they saw only a shimmering lake where Cantre'r should have stood. Local lore claims the city's defenders prayed for deliverance, and in answer, the ground opened like a living thing, drawing the city beneath the waters as divine protection. Some versions insist the invaders heard ghostly bells ringing beneath the surface, a sound still reported by visitors to this day. What sets Cantre'r apart from other vanishing cities is its spiritual weight. Unlike Atlantis's hubris or Aram's wickedness, Cantre'r's disappearance represents a triumph of faith over violence. Russian Old Believers, a sect preserving ancient Orthodox traditions, see it as a living metaphor. The true church isn't gone but concealed from the corrupt world, waiting to emerge when righteousness returns. This idea resonates deeply in Russian culture, echoing through literature like Rimsky-Korsakov's opera The Legend of the Invisible City of Cantre'r and modern films where the lake becomes a portal to another realm. Yet beneath the legend, geological whispers hint at a possible reality. Lake Svetloyar sits atop a network of karst caves, landscapes prone to sudden collapses. In 2012, sonar scans revealed strange, angular shapes on the lakebed, too symmetrical to be natural formations. Divers documented what appeared to be submerged wooden structures, though skeptics argue these could be remnants of fishermen's docks. More compelling are the regional records of seismic activity. Medieval chronicles note earthquakes in the Volga region around the time of the Mongol invasion, events that could have triggered a catastrophic sinkhole. The lake itself defies scientific explanation in ways that feed the mystique. Its waters remain unnaturally clear, with locals claiming they never spoil, stored in jars for years without growing algae. Hydrogeologists attribute this to unique mineral springs feeding the lake, but for believers, it's further proof of Cantre'r's sanctity. Even the name Svetloyar breaks down to bright Svet and Lake Yar, evoking its reputation as a beacon of the divine. Pilgrims still circle the lake at night, chanting hymns passed down through generations. Some swear they've glimpsed lights moving beneath the water or heard faint choir voices rising with the mist. Whether these experiences are miracles or the power of suggestion matters less than what they reveal about human longing for sanctuary, for justice, for a world where goodness can't be erased, only waiting beneath the surface. Cantre'r endures not because it challenges history, but because it transcends it, offering not ruins to excavate, but hope to uncover. And in that way, the city is never truly lost, just listening, just below the waterline for the day it's needed again. Long before colonial scientists dreamed up Lemuria, the Tamil poets of southern India were singing of a lost world beneath the waves. Their ancient Sangam texts, some dating back 2,000 years, describe Cumri Kandam, a vast continent stretching from the southern tip of India to lands now swallowed by the Indian Ocean. Unlike abstract myths, these poems offer startling specifics. A thriving civilization of scholar poets, lush forests teeming with medicinal herbs, and a capital city adorned with golden towers. But the most haunting detail, the land didn't vanish in a single cataclysm. It endured 3 successive floods, each one erasing more of its glory, until only scattered fragments remained, echoes of a homeland now known only in verse. What makes Cumri Kandam unique isn't just its vivid portrayal, but how deeply it's woven into Dravidian identity. Tamil nationalists and scholars have long claimed it as proof of their cultural antiquity, arguing that this sunken continent was the cradle of their language and traditions. The Sangam texts describe universities where Tamil grammar was perfected, hinting at a sophisticated society predating the Aryan migrations that shaped northern India. Modern linguists note striking parallels between Tamil and ancient Sumerian, fueling theories of a shared origin, perhaps even a land bridge now lost to the sea. Yet the controversy deepens when colonial-era pseudoscience enters the picture. 19th century theosophists like Madame Blavatsky hijacked the narrative, blending Tamil lore with their own racist root race theories, portraying Cumri Kandam as the homeland of a mystical, dark-skinned elite. Geology offers tantalizing hints of truth beneath the legend. The continental shelf off India's southern coast shows clear signs of submergence, with underwater valleys that once would have been river systems. Marine archaeologists have discovered submerged settlements near Pumpuhar, their stone structures eerily aligning with Sangam descriptions of coastal cities. Even more compelling are the Adams Bridge shoals between India and Sri Lanka, a chain of limestone reefs some researchers argue could be the remnants of a lost land connection. These aren't proofs of a continent, but they suggest the Tamil poets might have been preserving memories of shorelines swallowed by post-Ice Age sea level rise. The legacy of Kumari Kandam today is a tapestry of pride and peril. For many Tamils, it symbolizes resistance to cultural erasure, a reminder that their history predates colonial and northern dominance. Yet the myth has also been weaponized, twisted by fringe groups to fuel divisive identity politics. The challenge lies in separating cultural memory from modern agenda, honoring the poetic truth of loss and resilience without falling into the quicksand of fabricated history. Perhaps Kumari Kandam's greatest gift isn't a map to a drowned world, but a mirror reflecting how civilizations process trauma, turning the rising tides of time into stories that refuse to sink. 8,000 years ago, where the North Sea's waves now churn between Britain and the Netherlands, a vast landscape stretched unbroken rolling hills dense with oak forests, winding rivers teeming with fish, and valleys where mammoths still roamed. This was Doggerland, a real lost world swallowed not by myth but by rising seas. Unlike the fantastical realms we've explored, Doggerland's existence is etched into the seabed itself. Sonar scans reveal drowned river channels, peat bogs, and even the footprints of Mesolithic hunters preserved in ancient silt. But here's what's haunting. The people who once called this land home didn't just vanish without a trace. Their stories might linger in the flood myths whispered across Europe, tales of deluges so catastrophic they reshaped the very edges of the world. The scale of Doggerland staggers the imagination. At its peak, around 10,000 BC, it spanned over 100,000 square miles, larger than modern Britain. Archaeologists dredging the seafloor have unearthed flint tools, red deer antlers carved into fishing spears, and even a fragment of a human skull, all dating back to a time when this was dry land. These finds paint a picture of thriving communities living in harmony with a landscape that's now 60 feet underwater. But around 6200 BC, disaster struck. A massive underwater landslide off Norway, the Storegga Slide, triggered a tsunami that ripped through Doggerland's low-lying plains. Then, as glaciers melted and seas rose, the relentless tide finished the job, drowning the last remnants of this prehistoric paradise by 5500 BC. What makes Doggerland truly extraordinary is how it bridges geology and folklore. The trauma of its disappearance likely echoed through generations, morphing into the flood myths found from the British Isles to the Baltic. Consider the Welsh legend of Cantre'r Gwaelod, the Sunken Hundred, or the Norse tale of Ymir's blood drowning the first giants. Even Plato's account of Atlantis, written millennia later, might carry faint whispers of this real event. Recent research adds weight to this theory. Linguists note striking similarities in flood-related words across ancient European languages, suggesting a shared cultural memory. Meanwhile, genetic studies reveal that Britain's Neolithic settlers arrived in two distinct waves, one before Doggerland's final submergence and one after. The survivors didn't just disappear, they carried their stories with them, adapting to new shores. Modern technology is finally pulling Doggerland's secrets from the depths. Fishermen trawling the North Sea's brown bank have hauled up prehistoric bones and tools for centuries, unknowingly plowing through forgotten graves. But today, projects like Europe's Lost Frontiers use seismic mapping to reconstruct Doggerland's lost geography with astonishing detail. They've identified potential settlement sites clustered along old river systems, prime real estate for hunter-gatherers. In 2019, divers off the Dutch coast discovered a trove of flint artifacts and butchered animal bones, proving humans clung to Doggerland's shrinking islands until the waves took them. The eeriest clue might lie beneath the waves near Norfolk. In 2023, archaeologists investigating a strange underwater structure called Hillsborough found evidence of a massive wooden platform, possibly a ritual site or communal meeting place. Carbon dating placed it at the very edge of Doggerland's habitable timeline, as if its builders were making their last stand against the rising tide. It's a poignant reminder these weren't primitive people helpless before nature. They were survivors who watched their world drown inch by inch, season by season. Their legacy isn't just in the artifacts we recover, but in the stories they left behind, warning us that even the sturdiest lands can slip beneath the waves when the climate decides to rewrite the map. Doggerland's fate feels uncomfortably relevant today. As glaciers melt and oceans rise once more, we're mirroring the choices of those Mesolithic communities: adapt or perish. Perhaps that's why this sunken land fascinates us. It's not just a relic of the past, but a reflection of our future, whispering across millennia that the line between land and sea has always been thinner than we dare admit. On the sun-baked coasts of southern Spain, where the Guadalquivir River meets the Atlantic, the ancient Greeks whispered of a kingdom so wealthy its very streets seemed paved with gold. This was Tartessos, a civilization that flourished in the Iberian Peninsula around the 9th to 6th centuries BC, trading silver, tin, and precious metals with Phoenician merchants and Greek explorers. The historian Herodotus described its rulers as the most prosperous of all peoples, while later Roman geographers spoke of its capital as a labyrinth of canals and gleaming temples. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared in the historical record, Tartessos vanished. No invasions, no natural disasters recorded, just silence. Was this a real kingdom erased by time, or a mirage conjured by traders' tall tales? The search for Tartessos reads like a detective story spanning centuries. Early archaeologists focused on the marshlands of Andalusia's Doñana National Park, where 19th-century treasure hunters had uncovered gold jewelry and strange inscribed stones. But the breakthrough came in the 1950s, when excavations at the site of El Carambolo revealed a trove of golden artifacts, 21 intricate pieces including bracelets and pectoral plates, all crafted in a style blending Phoenician and local motifs. This wasn't just a hoard, it was evidence of a sophisticated culture with its own artistic identity. More clues emerged from the nearby ruins of Roanoke, a sprawling complex with ritual altars and evidence of metallurgy, suggesting Tartessos was more than a trading post. It was a networked society with its own religious and economic systems. What makes Tartessos uniquely tantalizing are the cryptic inscriptions left behind. The Tartessian language, preserved on a handful of steel and pottery shards, remains only partially deciphered. Unlike the Phoenician alphabet it borrowed from, Tartessian script shows signs of encoding an indigenous Iberian tongue, possibly the ancestor of modern Basque. Linguists pore over these fragments like crossword puzzles, hoping to decode the kingdom's origins. Meanwhile, geologists studying sediment cores from the Guadalquivir estuary have uncovered traces of a massive tsunami around the 5th century BC, exactly when Tartessos disappears from records. Could a freak wave have drowned its coastal cities, leaving only inland survivors to scatter into obscurity? Yet the most compelling theory isn't about destruction, it's about transformation. Some scholars argue Tartessos never fell at all. Instead, its people may have gradually assimilated into the rising power of the Carthaginians, their culture absorbed like a river merging into the sea. Recent DNA analysis supports this. Bones from Tartessian-era graves show genetic links to both local Iberians and Phoenician settlers, proof of a melting pot society. The kingdom's legacy might live on in the myth of Atlantis, which Plato placed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the same gateway where Tartessos thrived. Modern technology is rewriting the search. Satellite imagery reveals buried structures beneath Doñana's wetlands, while ground-penetrating radar hints at a grid of streets near the ancient shoreline. Each discovery peels back another layer of the mystery, revealing not a legend but a real people who bridged the Mediterranean and Atlantic worlds. Tartessos challenges our obsession with dramatic downfalls. Sometimes civilizations don't collapse, they simply evolve, their stories woven so tightly into the fabric of history that we forget they were ever separate. The next time you walk a shoreline where rivers meet the sea, listen closely. The water might still carry echoes of a kingdom that turned the tides of trade, then slipped beneath the waves of time. West of Ireland's wild Connemara coast, where the Atlantic's grey waves slam against jagged cliffs, fishermen's lore speaks of an island that isn't always there. High Brazil, sometimes called High Brasil or Obressail, isn't just another lost land. It's a spectral presence, a mist-wrapped realm said to materialize once every 7 years, just long enough to tease sailors before dissolving back into the horizon. Unlike solid ground you can anchor to, this phantom island exists in a liminal space between cartography and daydream, appearing on actual nautical charts as early as the 1400s, yet always slipping through the fingers of those who seek it. The name itself is a linguistic chimera, blending the Gaelic Iacute Bresail, possibly meaning Isle of the Blessed, with the Portuguese Brasil, referring to the mythical red dye wood that fueled medieval trade fantasies. But what makes High Brazil extraordinary isn't just its elusiveness, it's how stubbornly it clung to maps, lingering in atlases for centuries after explorers had circled the globe. The earliest confirmed depiction dates to 1375, when the Catalan Atlas, a masterpiece of medieval cartography, placed High Brazil as a perfect circle split by a winding channel southwest of Ireland. Over the next 300 years, it migrated across sea charts, sometimes appearing as a crescent, other times as a cluster of tiny isles. Ship captains reported sightings well into the 19th century, describing an emerald land veiled in mist, its shores receding as their vessels drew near. In 1870, Irish folklorist T.J. Westrop even claimed his entire family watched the island emerge at sunset, its hills glowing with an unearthly golden light before fading like a sigh. Skeptics dismissed these accounts as mirages or icebergs, but the persistence of the myth hints at something deeper, the human need to believe there's always one more horizon left uncharted. What separates High Brazil from mere cartographic errors is its cultural resonance. Irish legends describe it as a paradise where monks and saints retreated to escape worldly corruption, echoing broader Celtic myths of Tir na an Og and other earthly Edens. The island's periodic appearances often coincided with feast days, suggesting a sacred rhythm to its vanishing act. Even the channel cutting through it holds symbolic weight. Some scholars argue it represents a portal between worlds, a concept found in Norse sagas and Breton tales alike. This wasn't just a navigational blip, it was a collective dream woven into the fabric of seafaring consciousness. Modern science offers intriguing explanations. The Porcupine Bank, a shallow submarine plateau 200 miles west of Ireland, rises to within 60 fathoms of the surface, shallow enough to stir up bioluminescent plankton during storms, which could create the illusion of glowing shores. Others point to Fata Morgana, a complex mirage caused by thermal inversion layers that distort and elevate distant coastlines. In 2014, researchers scanning the Atlantic seabed discovered a sunken microcontinent dubbed Irelandia, remnants of a landmass that sank 50 million years ago. While no proof links this to High Brazil, it's a tantalizing reminder that the ocean floor still holds surprises. Yet High Brazil's true magic lies in its refusal to be pinned down. Long after it vanished from maps, the idea haunted artists and writers. Victorian poet Aubrey de Vere spun it into verse as a metaphor for unattainable ideals, while 20th century fantasists like Jorge Luis Borges wove it into labyrinths of metaphysical speculation. Even the Brazilian state of Pernambuco briefly considered naming itself Brasil in the island's honor during the 16th century, a nod to the myth's global reach. Today, as satellite imagery leaves no patch of ocean unexplored, High Brazil endures as a testament to the allure of the unknown, not because it might be real, but because we crave places that defy the tyranny of maps. Somewhere beyond the edge of certainty, where the sea melts into sky, the old sailor's adage still holds: not all who wander are lost, but some lands wander too. From the drowned spires of Wise to the golden streets of Tartessos, these 30 myths share a haunting thread: the human obsession with worlds that slip through time's fingers. What unites them isn't just the thrill of discovery, but something deeper: our collective longing to believe that history has hidden rooms waiting to be unlocked. Whether through Plato's intricate allegories or the whispered warnings of Bedouin elders, these stories blur the line between fact and folklore, each one a mirror reflecting the fears and aspirations of the cultures that birthed them. The drowned cities warn of hubris, the hidden kingdoms promise redemption. Every vanished civilization, real or imagined, becomes a cautionary tale or a beacon of hope for those who come after. Consider how these legends evolve. Atlantis begins as a philosophical metaphor, then mutates into a technological utopia for New Age dreamers. Shambhala starts as a Buddhist refuge, only to be weaponized by Nazi occultists. The same tale can inspire both wonder and tyranny, depending on who holds the pen. That's the power of lost worlds. They're blank canvases where we project our best and worst selves. When archaeologists uncover real ruins beneath these myths, like the sunken streets of Dwarka or the jungle-cloaked pyramids of the Mosquisha, it's not proof that legends are true, but evidence that human imagination has always been rooted in reality's fertile soil. These stories also expose our fraught relationship with the natural world. From Doggerland's post-Ice Age drowning to the ancestral Puebloan's drought-driven exodus, environmental catastrophe is the silent protagonist in so many disappearances. Today, as coastlines erode and deserts expand, these ancient warnings feel unsettlingly prescient. The most enduring myths aren't about the past at all, they're conversations with the future, asking what fragments of our own world might one day fuel someone else's legends. But perhaps the most magical thing about lost worlds is how they keep us searching. Every satellite scan of the Amazon, every dive into Arctic waters, is fueled by the same irrepressible curiosity that sent medieval monks chasing Prester John or conquistadors hacking through jungles for El Dorado. The difference: now we know the truth is often stranger than fiction. Who could have imagined that the mythical hanging gardens might have been real just in the wrong city? Or that a child's green skin might be explained by anemia rather than fairies? So what's your favorite enigma, the spectral glow of high Brazil on the horizon? The bells of Cantre'r Gwaelod tolling beneath the waves? Drop your theories in the comments, because history's greatest mysteries are best explored together. And stay tuned, our next chapter will delve into vanished manuscripts, unbreakable codes, and the secrets hiding in plain sight. After all, the map of the past is still being drawn, and every discovery rewrites the story. Who knows what lost world we'll uncover next? The only certainty is this: the Earth hasn't run out of secrets.